My father raised his glass at the dinner table and smiled at me the way you smile at someone you've already given up on. "Still renting," he said. Not asking. Announcing. The whole table heard it. My uncle. My cousin. My father's business partner, who I had never met before that evening. Nobody corrected him. Nobody looked at me. That's when I realized something was very wrong. Let me tell you something about my family before I tell you what I did. We are not a loud family. We don't shout. We don't throw things. The damage in my family is done quietly, over dinner tables, in careful sentences that sound like concern but land like accusations. My father is good at that. He spent 30 years building a small real estate business, and somewhere along the way he decided that property ownership was the only measurement of a person's worth. If you owned land, you were serious. If you rented, you were temporary. A placeholder. Someone still figuring it out. I had heard this my entire life. What I didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had stopped renting 4 years ago. I'll come back to that. My name isn't important. I'm in my mid-30s. I work in property management and investment. I keep quiet about money. I always have. It's not modesty, it's just that I learned early that telling my family anything about your finances only gives them new material. So I stopped. I kept my life separate. I attended the dinners, I answered the phone calls, I nodded through the lectures. And I let them believe what they believed. For years, that system worked. Then my father's business partner sat down at that dinner table. His name was Mr. Hassan. A tall man, early 60s, very well dressed. He shook hands with everyone, said little, ate slowly. I noticed he avoided eye contact with me specifically. Not in a rude way. In a careful way. The way someone avoids eye contact when they are afraid of being recognized. I recognized him immediately. He didn't know that. Mr. Hassan was one of my tenants. Not a personal tenant, I should explain. 4 years ago, I purchased a small commercial building through a holding company. A quiet acquisition. 3 ground floor units, 2 upper floors converted to office space. I used a management company to handle the day-to-day. My name appears nowhere on the public-facing documents. The holding company has a different name. This was intentional. I had learned from watching my father that mixing personal identity with business creates unnecessary complications. So I kept it clean and kept it separate. Mr. Hassan's company leased one of the ground floor units. A clothing distribution office. They had been tenants for 2.5 years. Good tenants, mostly. Paid on time. Minor maintenance complaints. Nothing unusual. Until 3 months ago. 3 months ago, payments stopped. Not a delay. A stop. Complete silence from the company. No response to formal notices. No reply from their registered contact. My management company had escalated twice. We were now in formal arrears proceedings. The outstanding amount was significant, nearly 4 months of commercial rent, plus late fees. Legal letters had been sent. We were days away from filing for a possession order. And here was Mr. Hassan, sitting at my father's table, drinking my father's wine, laughing at my father's jokes. I said nothing. I took one slow breath, picked up my fork, and continued eating. My father made the comment again later, louder this time, for the benefit of the table. My son is very comfortable renting. Some people prefer it. He smiled at Mr. Hassan when he said it. Mr. Hassan chuckled politely. My uncle nodded as though a great truth had been spoken. I watched Mr. Hassan's face while he laughed. He had absolutely no idea. After dinner, while the others moved to the sitting room, I stepped outside for air. I stood in the courtyard and did a very simple thing. I opened my email and pulled up the last formal notice sent to Mr. Hassan's company. Sent 12 days ago. Signed by our solicitors. His company name. His registered address. Then I went back inside and sat down. I didn't say anything. I didn't make a move. I didn't drop a hint. There are people who, in my position, would have said something right there at the table. Would have let the moment be dramatic. I understand that impulse. But I've watched enough situations collapse because someone couldn't wait. Because they gave away what they knew too early. Because they chose the satisfaction of the moment over the outcome they actually needed. I needed an outcome. My father would never have believed me anyway. Not right then. Not without proof sitting directly in front of him. And even then, with my father, you had to be careful about how the proof arrived. He had spent years deciding who I was. One dinner table comment was not going to undo that. But something else might. I watched Mr. Hassan say his goodbyes that night. Warm handshakes. Promises to meet again. My father walked him to the door with his hand on the man's shoulder. Old friends, practically. I watched, and I said nothing, and I kept my face still. So I stopped reacting. And I started watching. The next morning, I called my management company before 9 a.m. I didn't tell them why. I just asked for a full file pull on the unit, everything. Lease agreement, payment history, all correspondence, every notice sent and received, timestamps on emails, recorded delivery confirmations. I asked for it compiled and sent to me directly, not just held on their system. They sent it within 2 hours. I sat at my desk and went through it carefully. Not quickly. Carefully. The lease had been signed 2 years and 8 months ago. The company name on the agreement was registered correctly. The signatory was Mr. Hassan himself, his signature, his personal guarantee. That last part was important. He hadn't just signed as a company director. He had signed a personal guarantee on the lease. That meant the debt wasn't just the company's liability. It was his. I read that clause twice. Then I kept reading. The payment history was clean for the first 20 months. Direct debits clearing on time, every month, without exception. Then, starting 5 months ago, small irregularities. One payment 3 days late. Then a week late. Then a partial payment, 60% of the monthly amount, with no explanation attached. Then, for the last 4 months, nothing. This is not unusual in commercial property. Businesses go through difficulty. Cash flow problems happen. What made this file different was the correspondence section. My management company had sent the first formal arrears notice 8 weeks ago. Recorded delivery. Signed for at the registered address. No response. A follow-up email 2 weeks later, read receipt confirmed, opened within 4 hours of sending. No response. A third notice, this time from our solicitors, sent 12 days ago. Again, signed for. Again, no response. He had received everything. He had read at least one of them. He had chosen silence. That is a specific choice. Silence, in a legal context, is not neutral. It is a decision. I noted the dates. I noted the read receipt timestamp. I saved copies of everything to a separate folder, then backed it up in 2 other places. Then I did something my management company didn't know I was going to do. I made a quiet call to the company's house record service and pulled the public filings for Mr. Hassan's company. Annual returns. Director information. Registered address history. It took about 20 minutes. What I found was this: 5 months ago, exactly when the payment started going irregular, Mr. Hassan's company had filed a change of registered address. The new address was a virtual office service. A mail forwarding operation. The kind businesses use when they are restructuring, or when they are preparing to dissolve. 1 month after the address change, a second company had been incorporated. Different name. Different registration number. But the director listed was Mr. Hassan's wife. And the registered address was their family home. I sat with that for a moment. This is a pattern. Not a suspicion, a pattern. A business begins struggling, or a business owner decides to walk away from obligations. A new company is quietly set up under a family member's name. The old company is left with the debts, rent arrears, supplier invoices, whatever has accumulated. The new company carries on, clean, without the liability. The creditors are left chasing a shell. It is not uncommon. It is not even always illegal, depending on how it's done. But when there is a personal guarantee on the original lease, when the director signed his own name alongside the company's, The liability does not disappear with the company. It follows him. He had signed that guarantee. His name. His responsibility. I read through the new company's incorporation documents. The business description was listed as clothing and textile distribution. Same industry. Same function. Just a different name. I went back to the dinner table in my mind. My father's hand on Mr. Hassan's shoulder. Old friends. A man who had walked into my family's home, laughed at a joke made at my expense, and was at that same moment ignoring 4 months of legal notices sent to a company he was quietly abandoning. I didn't feel angry. I want to be honest about that. I felt something colder than anger. Something that wasn't about the money, and wasn't about my father's comment, and wasn't about the dinner table. It was about the calculation. The assumption that silence would work. That nobody would look closely enough. That the personal guarantee was just a formality, not a real exposure. People make that assumption often. It rarely ends well for them. I called my solicitor that same afternoon. Not my management company's solicitor, my own. A property litigation specialist I had used twice before, a quiet and very precise woman who does not waste words. I told her I needed to discuss a commercial lease dispute and a potential personal guarantee enforcement. I also told her there was a complicating factor involving a connected party, a second company, recently incorporated, same director family, same trade. She asked one question: did I have documentation for all of it? I said yes. She said, send it over. Don't do anything else yet. I didn't. I compiled everything that afternoon. Lease. Payment history. Notices. Read receipts. Company's house filings for both entities. The personal guarantee clause, highlighted. The new company incorporation documents. A clear, factual timeline, no interpretation, no commentary, just dates and facts in sequence. I sent it. Then I closed my laptop and made dinner. I didn't call my father. I didn't mention Mr. Hassan to anyone. I didn't change anything about how I moved through that week. My father sent a message 2 days later saying it had been good to see me, and that Mr. Hassan had asked after me. I replied, good to hear. Hope work is going well. Nothing more. There was no satisfaction in that moment. Not yet. Confronting them would have ruined everything. My solicitor called me back within 48 hours. She had reviewed everything. Her tone was the same as always, measured, unhurried, precise. She said the personal guarantee was clean. Well drafted, no ambiguity, no expiry clause. Mr. Hassan had signed it in his personal capacity, witnessed correctly, dated. She said the arrears were provable, the notices had been properly served, and the read receipt on the email was useful supporting evidence even if not strictly required. Then she paused. She said, the second company is interesting. I waited. She explained that if we could demonstrate that the new company was effectively a continuation of the old one, same trade, same function, overlapping operations, there was a potential argument for what's called a Phoenix company situation. It doesn't automatically create liability, but it strengthens the narrative significantly, particularly if this ever reaches a judge. It shows a pattern of intent. It shows the guarantee wasn't abandoned by accident. She asked me one more question. Had there been any communication at all from Mr. Hassan or his company since the arrears began? Any message, any verbal conversation, any promise to pay? I thought about the dinner. I thought about him sitting there, laughing, while my father made comments about renting. I said, not in writing. But there may be something worth noting. I told her about the dinner. Not emotionally. Just as a factual sequence. The date, the setting, the connection between Mr. Hassan and my father, the fact that we had been in the same room together and he had not raised the matter or acknowledged any awareness of it. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, that's useful context. Keep it to yourself for now. I said I would. We agreed on next steps. She would prepare a formal letter before action addressed to Mr. Hassan personally, not the company, him, referencing the personal guarantee specifically, the full arrears amount, and a 14-day deadline. If no response, we would proceed to county court judgment. She would also send a separate letter to the new company, documenting our awareness of its existence and its relationship to the original entity. Before we ended the call, she said something that I've thought about since. She said, "The most important thing you've done in this situation is wait. Most people don't wait. They send an angry message or they make a phone call that gives the other party time to prepare. You haven't done that. That matters." I noted that. I didn't respond to it. After the call, I did 3 things. First, I made physical copies of every document in the file and stored them in a separate location. Not at my home. A secure place. Belt and braces, as they say. Second, I sent a brief message to my management company formally requesting that all communication with the tenant and their representatives be routed through my solicitor going forward. I gave them her contact details. I told them to send nothing further directly. Third, I did nothing else. That week, my father called twice. Normal calls. He mentioned Mr. Hassan once in passing, said they were discussing a possible joint investment, something in commercial property. He said it casually, the way you mention good news. I said, "Sounds interesting." Nothing more. My father asked if I was thinking about buying anywhere yet. I said, "I'm always looking." He made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite a sigh. The sound he makes when he thinks you've confirmed something he already believed about you. I let him make that sound. The formal letter was sent on a Tuesday. Recorded delivery to Mr. Hassan's home address, the family home, the same address listed as the registered address for his wife's new company. My solicitor also sent a copy by email to every address we had on file for him. By Thursday, the letter had been delivered. Signed for at the door. By Friday, we had a response. Not from Mr. Hassan. From a solicitor acting on his behalf. The letter was short. It disputed the arrears figure. It claimed that a verbal agreement had been made with the management company to defer payments during a period of business difficulty. It said Mr. Hassan denied personal liability on the grounds that the guarantee had been signed under duress. I read that last part twice. Signed under duress. I forwarded it to my solicitor without comment. She called me within the hour. Her voice was the same as always, but there was something underneath it, not amusement, exactly, but something close. She said, "They've overplayed their hand. The duress claim was weak. There was no evidence to support it, no prior record of any complaint, no communication at any point in the tenancy raising any concern about the signing process. The verbal deferment claim was also thin. My management company had no record of any such agreement, and all their communications were logged. There was no record because no such agreement had ever been made. More importantly, responding through a solicitor was itself significant. It meant Mr. Hassan was taking it seriously. It meant he understood the personal guarantee was real exposure. A man who genuinely believed he had no liability doesn't hire a solicitor within 72 hours. We prepared our response carefully. My solicitor addressed each claim point by point. The arrears calculation was itemized precisely against the lease terms. The duress claim was rebutted with a reference to the signing date, the witness, and the absence of any documented concern raised in over 2 years of tenancy. The verbal deferment claim was met with a full log of all management company communications, every email, every notice, every recorded delivery. We also, very quietly, included a single paragraph noting our awareness of the new company. No accusation. No legal argument at that stage. Just an acknowledgement. A signal. My solicitor said, "Now we wait again." So I waited. That weekend, my father called to invite me to another dinner. Same group. He mentioned Mr. Hassan would be there. I said, "I'll be there." I drove to that dinner calmly. I sat at the table. I ate. I listened. Mr. Hassan was quieter this time. Less comfortable. He glanced at me twice during the meal and each time looked away quickly. He knew the letter had come from someone connected to the property. He didn't know it was me. He couldn't know, my name wasn't on any of it. But he was doing the calculation. Trying to figure out how exposed he was. Trying to decide how worried to be. I passed him the bread basket and said nothing. My father made a comment about the property market. Mr. Hassan agreed with whatever my father said. I watched his hands while he talked. Slightly too still. The way hands go still when a person is concentrating on appearing relaxed. I finished my meal. I helped clear the table. I said goodnight to everyone, shook Mr. Hassan's hand firmly, and left. In the car, I checked my email. My solicitor had sent a message an hour earlier. Mr. Hassan's solicitor had requested a without prejudice call to discuss a possible settlement. They thought it was just another day. It wasn't. The without prejudice call was scheduled for the following Wednesday. I didn't attend it personally. That's not how these things work. My solicitor represented my interests. I gave her a clear brief the night before. I was open to a settlement, but only under specific conditions. Full arrears paid. All legal costs covered. A signed deed of release confirming the guarantee was discharged only upon complete payment. Nothing informal. Nothing verbal. Everything documented. She said, understood. I went to work that morning and did not think about the call until she rang me at 11:30. She said it had lasted 40 minutes. Mr. Hassan's solicitor had opened by suggesting a reduced settlement, approximately 60% of the arrears, spread over a payment plan, in exchange for releasing the personal guarantee. My solicitor declined. She presented the full documentation. The itemized arrears. The notice history. The read receipts. The personal guarantee with no ambiguity. The Phoenix Company paragraph, included quietly, almost as a footnote. That footnote, she told me, was the moment the tone of the call changed. Mr. Hassan's solicitor went quiet for a moment after it was raised. Then asked how much detail we had on the second company. My solicitor said, enough. She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. The question itself told us what we needed to know. They were worried about it. A man with nothing to hide doesn't ask how much you know. By the end of the call, the offer had moved significantly. Full arrears. All legal costs. Payment within 21 days. In exchange, no further action regarding the second company, no formal complaint to any regulatory body, and a mutual confidentiality clause. I asked my solicitor what she thought. She said, it's a full recovery. You get everything you're owed. The confidentiality clause protects them, but it also protects you from any counterclaim, however weak. If you want to pursue the Phoenix Company angle further, you can. But that becomes a longer, more expensive process with a less certain outcome. This closes it cleanly. I thought about it for less than a minute. I said, accept it. She drafted the settlement deed that afternoon. It was signed by both parties within the week. The payment arrived in full on the 19th day. I checked the account, confirmed the transfer, and forwarded the confirmation to my solicitor. She replied with 2 words, all done. I sat with that for a moment. Not triumphant. Just still. The money was not the point. It never entirely is, in situations like this. The money was the outcome, but it wasn't the reason I had done any of it carefully. The reason was simpler than that. Mr. Hassan had made a calculation, that silence and delay and a weak legal argument would be enough. That whoever owned that building would eventually settle for less, or give up, or make a mistake that gave him room. He had signed a guarantee and then decided it didn't apply to him. He had sat at a dinner table and laughed while that assumption sat quietly in the room with both of us. The calculation was wrong. That's all. I didn't tell my father. I want to be clear about that. There was no moment where I sat down across from him and revealed what had happened. No scene. No confrontation. I had thought about it. I won't pretend I hadn't. There had been a version of this, in the early days, where I imagined the look on his face when he understood what he had missed. When he realized that the son he introduced to his business partner as someone who was still renting was, in fact, his business partner's landlord. But I thought about what that moment would actually cost. My father is not a bad man. He is a limited one. His understanding of success is narrow, and it was built over decades, and a single dinner table revelation was not going to dismantle it. What it would do is create noise. Defensiveness. A story that got reshaped over time until he was somehow the one who had been wronged. I know my father. I know how he processes information that challenges his picture of things. The reveal would have become about him. So I kept it. About 3 weeks after the settlement, my father called to tell me that Mr. Hassan had pulled out of their joint investment discussion. No explanation given. Just a polite message saying he was stepping back from new commitments for the time being. My father sounded mildly annoyed but not devastated. He said, "These things happen. You can never really know someone in business." I said, "No. You can't." He moved on quickly to other topics. He asked about my work. I said it was going well. He asked, almost out of habit, whether I was still in the same place, still renting. There was a pause on the line. Not a dramatic pause. Just a breath. The kind that comes when you are deciding between two true things and choosing the one that serves the moment better. I said, "I'm comfortable where I am." He accepted that the way he always did, as confirmation of a story he'd already written. And I let him keep it. Some things are not for sharing. Some outcomes don't need a witness to be real. The settlement was real. The payment was real. The deed of release, signed and stored, was real. None of it required my father's acknowledgement to exist. I drove past the building once, about a month later. Not deliberately, it was on a route I sometimes take. I slowed down slightly as I passed it. Ground floor unit, third from the left. New signage already going up. A different company, new tenant, clean start. I drove on. I didn't stop. I didn't take a photo. I didn't mark the moment in any particular way. I just kept moving. There is a version of this story where I made sure everyone knew. Where I sent a message or made a call or arranged for the right information to reach the right people at the right time. Where the dinner table comment got its direct, public answer. I understand why people want that version. It's more satisfying in a certain way. Cleaner. More complete. But the real version is this. A man underestimated me, made a financial decision based on that underestimation, and paid for it in full. Literally. With his own money. His name. His guarantee. Everything he had tried to quietly walk away from came back and settled exactly where it belonged. He knows what happened. I know what happened. That's enough. That night, everything was quiet.